continues into the darkness, and soon a low growl is heard as a huge hooded figure rises. The teenagers behind him begin to panic and scream, while Joe's eyes widen, similarly whimpering. He starts to shed in fear before letting out a scream, as the creature grabs him by the chest. The passengers begin to scream and panic even more, and Pedro yells, trying to keep everyone quiet. As they run toward the back of the bus, he orders them to sit down and be quiet, which they do with extreme difficulty, trying to think of a solution. He reaches for the steering wheel, and he realizes the key isn't in the ignition. Irritated, he lets out a series of curse words before rushing at Carol. He points to the trembling teenager, and he orders him to go get the key off Joe's body. But before Carol can respond, Nolan stands up and he offers to go in his place. At the same time, Bess runs to the front of the bus, and before anyone can stop her, she jumps out. Number 1 tries to stop her, but Pedro points the gun at him and he makes him freeze. Bess slowly and carefully advances toward Joe, while the others in the bus hold their breath. When she reaches what's left of Joe, she crouches, trembling, to put her hand in his pocket to get the key. She looks at his face and he starts to cry, but then a more distant sound in the darkness distracts her. So she grabs the flashlight and he turns it on. A sudden movement startles her, and she rushes back into the bus. Pedro takes her key and he orders Reggie to start the engine, while Nolan asks about Joe. And with a negative shake of her head, she says he's no more longer alive. Reggie tries to start the bus, but the engine won't turn over. Pedro begins to grow impatient, and he threatens to shoot the others if Reggie doesn't turn on the bus immediately. He threatens to start with Queenie, whom he calls Four Eyes. Upset by the insult, Reggie stands up threateningly, and he tells Pedro to stop referring to Queenie that way. And for a moment the armed man is distracted. Nolan sees his chance and he quickly shoves Pedro, allowing Reggie to grab his gun. With the roles reversed, Pedro steps back for a moment, while Reggie points the gun at him, but in an attempt to provoke him, Pedro starts calling Reggie names, and he tells the boy that he won't pull the trigger because he lacks courage. Something hits the bus and the teenagers get distracted for a moment, allowing Pedro to regain the gun. But this time he points it upwards, while the teenagers begin to whimper and become afraid. Pedro jumps out of the bus, and he starts yelling for the creature to come out of the darkness. Soon his plea is answered, and upon seeing the monster, he freezes in disbelief and he smiles shyly. A loud crash from outside surprises the friends, and they cluster in the aisle as they hear the sounds. Gunshots echo, causing the ghettos to scream and the boys to curse. All panic ensues, and Reggie worsens things by turning to Carl, and insulting him. Nolan tries to calm him down, but he tries to fight too, so the ghettos intervene. The fight is interrupted when a bizarre roar happens just outside the window, and upon seeing the creature holding Pedro's dead body in its hand, they begin to scream and huddle down between the seats. The creature growls and grunts, and the friends realize that the monster's hands have enormous claws that are embedded in the head of the miserable man. After it seems to fall out of reach, they try to figure out how to stay alive, and Reggie, annoyed, goes to sit in his usual seat at the back of the bus. The radio turns on, but they can't understand what the other person is saying, and while they try to listen, Reggie has a vertigo attack at the back of the bus. He stands up and he turns to the back window, pressing his hands and face against it hypnotically, before falling back into his seat. In the next scene, the teams can hear the familiar crunching noise, indicating the creature's arrival. They huddle together and turn toward the sound, starting to scream as the bus begins to shake. We see the long clawed fingers of the creature opening the front door and entering, while their screams intensify. They run toward the other door, and Reggie tries to force it open. Bess grabs the flashlight and points it toward the creature. This seems to have an effect on it, so they hold it off for a while before the door finally opens and they escape. Bess leads the way toward a door she saw earlier in the tunnel, and they find themselves in a bunker. After walking for some time, they find a room and decide to stay there. After Nolan inspects it, on a nearby wall, Nolan and Bess find a drawing that seems to be the floor plan of a military fortress. They decide that they need to find the control tower. T turn on the lights, but Reggie thinks they won't find it. They start talking about Joe, and Reggie tells the others that Joe knew his dad. Here we discover that Reggie's dad is in prison. Reggie sadly adds that his dad is innocent, and he is only serving time because Ray was framed. Nolan takes them up from the wall and he leads the friends, pointing to the control room, and Bess offers to go with him. Nolan is pleasantly surprised, and Reggie wishes them good luck before the two go find the control tower. On the way they have a good conversation. Nolan takes the opportunity to compliment her on her drawings. He tells her about his mom who used to paint and how his favorite painting is Eva Brucey by the ocean. But in the safe room, Carl makes drum noises and gestures as he lists everything he wants to eat between the beats. Reggie silences him but he doesn't hear, and they end up getting into a silly fight when Queenie interrupts the two, saying she needs to empty her bladder, and the boys vote for Reggie to accompany her, allowing Carl to keep making noise. While looking for the control tower, Nolan and Bess come across a huge machine that turns out to be a giant spotlight. And Bess comments that the plan obviously didn't work, while pointing her flaming torch toward an inner cave, where a dead body lies. Reggie and Queenie walk a bit, but before she chooses a place to urinate, Queenie tells Reggie to turn around, and move away from before she squats down to do what she needs. While busy, Reggie tells her that she looks cute when she's angry, and that he plans to make her angry more often, expecting a response but getting none. Reggie calls for her unsure if he should turn around. He eventually decides yes, and he realizes that she has disappeared. Scared, he races back to the safe room to call for Carl. On the other hand, Nolan and Bess continue looking around, and eventually, Bess calls for her friend with good news. They found the main panel. Reggie and Carl keep running and yelling for Queenie, and Reggie repeatedly blames her. They eventually find her in a dead hallway, screaming underneath the creature that seems to be feeding on her. Reggie bravely runs to her, and he tries to scare the monster with the lit torch in his hand, enough for Carl to get Queenie to safety. The creature knocks the flashlight from Reggie's hand into a puddle on the ground, extinguishing the fire. Meanwhile, Nolan struggles to flip the switch, so Bess helps him. Carl manages to take Queenie to a safer place, and when they catch their breath, she remembers Reggie. They go back for their friend and Carl calls for Reggie, who is in trouble with the creature above him. And something is dripping from the monster's mouth onto Reggie's chin, and it appears to be blood. Fortunately, before the worst happens, Bess and Nolan finally manage to move the large switch, turning on all the lights of the dead hallways. The creature screams and pulls away from the boy, disappearing from sight. Carl smiles with relief as he realizes that his friends found the generator in time back in the control room. Nolan and Bess find a small staircase leading down. They are led into a cave covered with newspapers and pictures of the creature that killed Joel. The two also find books and diaries that says someone was obsessed with the creature. Number one finds a Polaroid of a little girl and starts piecing together the whole story. They hurry back to tell their friends, and stop abruptly in a hallway. A shadow can be seen approaching in a nearby corner, and they wait with bated breath to see whose shadow it is. Fortunately, it's Reggie and the others, so Nolan lets out a sigh of relief along with Bess. They notice that Queenie is hurt and rush to her. Carl starts babbling about what happened, but number one can understand what he's saying, so number one calms him down, while Bess examines Queenie's injury.